Ready? Ready. Morning, this is Pat O'Connell. Calling to order the regular meeting of Thursday, July 13th of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. Mr. Cameron, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Aguilera. Present. Commissioner O'Connell.
Present.
Commissioner Ellison.
Present.
Mr. Chair, all commissioners are present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. So next up, rise and pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Salute of the state of New Mexico, and see a symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Okay, so next item is consideration and approval of the agenda. We received just minutes before this meeting, revision on the proposed action on consent item agenda B1. I don't believe that item has a deadline. We don't need to act today. So in order to consider the changes, I would propose just pulling that from the agenda and consider it in 2 weeks.
I think for that one, we do have a deadline because it's a request for rehearing. I don't recall the date this was filed, so I don't know which what the statutory deadline would be.
Can you help us with this, Russell?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the deadline for the motion for hearing is the 20th. That's next Thursday. I mean, the commission could schedule a special meeting, but the commission can't wait 2 weeks, or the motion would be automatically denied by operation of law. So today is the day, unless the commission wants to schedule another meeting or let it be denied by operation.
Okay, thank you for that. Didn't realize we had that option. Have you had a chance to look at the changes?
Unfortunately, I haven't looked at the changes. I'm certainly familiar with the previous order. I personally, I would be okay if Mr. Fisk would orally walk us through the changes, and if we were to take this off the consent agenda and place it onto the action item agenda.
Do we have any other changes to the agenda to discuss?
No.
Okay, so I guess I'll operate at the pleasure of the commission here. So do you want to make a motion for what you want to do to handle this case?
Well, I do see the option of having a special meeting next week. I would like to hear some of the precedent that was identified by our council. So I would move from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. Item B1 under the consent agenda section, which is docket 20-00104-UT.
I second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellison. Aye. The motion passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so next item on the agenda is announcements. First up, Office of General Counsel, and Mr. Cameron, could you also in your presentation read our recitation for the meeting we had on Monday?
I will, Mr. Chair. I have no other announcements, by the way, so I'll just read this. On July 10th, the commission met, July 10th, 2023, the commission met in a closed executive session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, NMSA Section 1015(1) H3 and NMSA Section 1015(1) H7 pertaining to administrative adjudicatory deliberations and attorney-client privilege respectively. And I affirm for the record that the matters discussed in the closed session were limited only to those specified in the notice and agenda for that meeting, specifically deliberations regarding the public hearing held on June 16, 2023 for case number 2300151 TREN, otherwise known as the investigation of American transportation, and deliberations regarding the consolidated Supreme Court appeals case numbers S1 SC 39673, S1 SC 39676 and S1 SC 39677, dealing with commission rulemaking regarding rule 17.7.3 for IRP and procurement procedures. And I further affirm that no official or final actions were taken at that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Next item is for commissioners. I just think it's worth it to highlight a couple things that are coming up. Our next regular open meeting, we're planning for July 27th, 10 a.m. in this room. We also have a couple public hearings coming up between now and then. There's one related to enchantment towing on July 19th and a hearing on the community solar program tariffs that will start on July 20th. So just wanted to announce that and highlight that commission will be working in public at those meetings. Commissioners, do you have any other announcements?
Yes, I'd like to follow up with an announcement about our third reliability workshop. At the time of the workshop, we did not have a date. We now would like to have it on August the 17th with feedback from the utilities by August the 11th. I'm not sure if we've gotten the official announcement yet on that, but if we haven't, it will go out hopefully today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do you have any announcements? Public comment. I checked with Patrick before the meeting. It didn't sound like we had anyone signed up for this meeting for online public comment. Is there anyone in the room who was here to give public comment? No. Okay, so we don't have anyone appearing to make public comment at this meeting. So next time on the agenda is the consent agenda. Having modified the agenda earlier at this meeting, we've got two cases on consent. A transportation matter, case 23-00111, and case 22-00288. So I realize I screwed up here, but we'll just continue with the consent action items and finish that. So commissioners, do you have any comments or discussion on the consent action item agenda?
I do not.
So I'll move that we approve the proposed orders and the consent agenda.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Aye,
Commissioner Ellison.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Okay, so attempting to correct my error. For some reason, I skip from announcements to public comment every time. I need to quit doing that. So next, let's back up. We do have an employee of the month. Do we have someone here to make that?
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you.
On behalf of the commission, I would like to recognize the PRC's Employee of the Month for July 2023. Elizabeth Jeffries from the Legal Division. By all accounts, Elizabeth has demonstrated outstanding leadership skills on the Legal Division team. Her initiative and positive attitude to gain expertise to help the Legal Division's transportation clients makes her a critical asset to the Legal Division and the Public Regulation Commission. Notably, Elizabeth is shepherding the Transportation Division's transition to the New Mexico Department of Transportation, which is an enormous task that Elizabeth is well equipped to handle. So on behalf of the commission and the staff at the PRC, thank you, Elizabeth, for your work and dedication, and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is approval of prior meeting minutes. We have minutes for 3 meetings in our folders. The June 16th special open meeting, it was one of the reliability workshops. Minutes for June 21st and 28th regular meeting. Is there any discussion on the draft minutes that we have? Yeah. Seeing none, I'll move for approval of the meeting minutes for the June 16th, 2023 special open meeting and the June 21st and June 28th regular meetings.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Aye,
Commissioner Ellison.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Okay, first regular action item is a transportation case 23-00151. Have our representative from Office of General Counsel, Erica Avila Stefans, to walk us through that. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This order adjusts the exception response time in this case. On Monday, the commission met in a deliberative closed session to discuss the recommended decision and to discuss the timeline in which the commission would like to decide on this recommended decision. Mindful that the potential acceptance of the recommended decision would allow a motor carrier to begin their operations again, contingent on them agreeing to certain conditions. After discussion, it was determined that since the recommended decision suggests that suspension should be lifted based contingent on the motor carrier agreeing to cooperate with additional inspections, which would affect both the motor carrier and our staff, the commission thought it necessary to play out the entire exception period. However, the commission felt that the timeline to file responses to exception should be shortened so that we may make a decision at the next regularly scheduled meeting on July 27th.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Stefans?
No questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Yeah, so I'll move to adopt the proposed order for the case 23-00151 TREN.
I second the motion.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellison.
Aye.
The motion passes, the motion passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we have one utility matter on the agenda for this morning. It's rulemaking for 17.9.551 and presentation from Mr. Lindy. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Commissioner. So yes, I have for you today a final order in 23-147, which is a rulemaking on the long-term prior approval of purchase power agreements, the PPA rule 551. This is an exceedingly simple and mundane rulemaking. It concerns two cross references to the IRP rule, which have been out of date for quite some time. So in the IRP rulemaking docket that was decided last year, the commission included a directive to OGC to review the commission's rules and find areas where there might be out of date cross references because the IRP rule had changed so significantly. We only identified two here in the PPA rule 551. And upon further research, Mr. Colin Gillespie helped me find this, but in 2007, actually, is where one of these cross references goes back to. It's references a case proceeding on the IRP that the PPA filing shall also follow, but that has been since revised since 2007 and no longer exists. The second cross reference again talks about another procedure in the IRP rule that was amended in last year and which no longer exists. And both of those have no kind of corresponding or corollary in the modern IRP rule. So the appropriate action is to just remove them. And that's what we proposed to do back in, I believe, May of this year. We held we scheduled written comments to be filed in June, and we held a public hearing in June. Only SPS filed comments and only SPS and staff attended the public hearing. And SPS has filed comments and oral comments, and staff's oral comments were all supportive of the changes. As I said, it's very simple and probably doesn't even deserve the amount of time that I've given it today. So with that, I would stand for questions and recommend that we adopt this final order.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation and all the work you put into getting it to today to make today easy. So from my point of view, commissioners, you got any questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you for the work on this. I would just say, these are ministerial type changes, but I appreciate, you putting this on the regular agenda. I think it's important just to highlight that the rules are changing even if they are ministerial. Thank you.
And I would like to comment and give credit to Commissioner Aguilera, because we've discussed that going forward in the future, probably in the NOPR order, we will include a similar type provision to ask OGC to revise other rules as well, but that we would include it in the rulemaking that's the orders being made instead of opening up a new rulemaking. So it'll save some resources and time in the future and hopefully simplify and make it more efficient.
So, Mr. Lundin, this is primarily deleting references to the old IRP rule. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So the first reference references a proceeding to consider an application pursuant to the old IRP rule. So that proceeding existed from 2007 to 2017 when it was amended in 2017. So obviously it's out of date by 6 years, but also there's no related proceeding now in the rule. So there's nothing that we could point to in its place. And as for the second reference, so the PPA rule requires that for the utilities showing in their PPA approval case, that they have to provide evidence that the PPA is consistent with the IRP. And then the rule says as described in section 10 of the IRP rule. So section 10 has changed as of last year, and the IRP rule no longer has any discussion of the utility providing evidence of consistency anymore. So there was nothing there to take its place.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, again, thank you for your presentation. Your answers helped me understand it better than I did, so. So anyway, I'll move to approve the rulemaking proposed here.
I second.
Commissioner Aguilera? Aye. Commissioner O'Connell?
Aye,
Commissioner Ellison?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Okay, so next item on the utility matters agenda is case 20-0014 UT. Mr. Fisk.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So I will focus on the order with Commissioner Aguilera's revisions. This sounds like everyone is familiar with the order that I drafted and sent yesterday. So we have two orders that differ in a significant way. But I'll explain why I think either order can be issued. So I won't go into great detail about the background. Obviously, this is a motion for rehearing by the city of Las Cruces, Marilee Souls, and the Doña Ana County with regard to the commission's order upon issuance of mandate or the mandate order. And there were two issues that they had with the order. One was the use of the term nunc pro tunc with regard to the reissuance of the portions of the final order, the appealed order that were undisturbed by the Supreme Court's decision as of the date that it was initially issued. That was part of what the movement's objected to. And the movement's also objected to the fact that the commission requested in that order that EPE calculate potential adjustments for the peer adjustments to rates to recover amounts due for the three holdings that were overturned by the court. Those were holdings that denied certain items from recovery and rates. The movements, of course, claimed that that was retroactive rate making. Staff filed a response in which it agreed. EPE filed a response in which it did not agree with that. With regard to the nunc pro tunc issue, staff also agreed with the movements. EP did not. So I won't go into the details there because you're already familiar with them. So the order that I drafted yesterday would have completely denied the motion for hearing. With regard to the nunc pro tunc issue, there's a description of why the commission is including the nunc pro tunc language, which is that the language in the court's decision, which is the standard language saying that the final order was vacated and annulled, could be interpreted to void that order as of the date of its issuance. And so just sort of I would say sort of a belt and suspenders approach. And from my perspective, which is in case that decision would be considered retroactive in that sense, the commission's order should likewise be. As you see from staff's response and the movement's motion, they see the nunc pro tunc issue as related to the retroactive rate making issue, which I don't. I think they're completely separate. I think it really doesn't matter whether this order or the mandate order included the nunc pro tunc language, because that was to take care of the issue of was this vacated as of that date. It wasn't it's not needed, that language, and was not there to facilitate a retroactive adjustment, because whether the commission reissues the final order as of today's date or the date that the mandate was issued, otherwise, in other words, post appeal, or as of the date of the original issuance, the commission can still decide either way with regard to whether to do an adjustment that's retroactive for that period. Because the adjustment that the commission will be doing is prospective in either event. If the commission decides to do an adjustment for the period past due amounts due to EPE, as per those the overturning of the three holdings, it'll still be a prospective order because it'll be part of rates. And I'm not saying that there's not a retroactive rate making issue there. I'm just saying it's not dependent upon whether the reissuance of the final order is non-pro-tunc. That was taking care of a different issue. So that's why I think either order can be issued, because the difference between these two orders is that the non-pro-tunc language would be in one and it would not be in the other. Now, I think Commissioner Aguilera is right. Says he had me look at, he asked us for me to look at some of the commission's prior decisions and rate cases where some of the holdings were overturned. And I did find two, including, I think, including the 2015 PNM rate case. And it just says the final orders reaffirmed or reissued with those portions that were not disturbed by the court. So my addition of non-pro-tunc language is my own concern, I guess, about the possible retroactive effect of the vacate of the court's decision, and those other orders don't say anything about it. They don't say retroactive as to the date of the issuance of that or of the appealed order or anything like that. They just say reaffirmed or reissued, and that's it. So I think actually that's probably that leaving out the language is more in line with what the commission has done before. But I don't really think it's that big a deal either way, because it's just addressing, the potential for the interpretation of the order of the court's decision. Now, of course, the movements point to the statute, language of the statute, Public Utility Act, Section 6211(6), which does say that the appealed order remains effective during the pendency of the appeal. And, that's why when I in the order partially granting the motion, the one that I sent today, the commission would just accept that as being sufficient and the commission wouldn't raise the concern that the court's decision actually had the effect of sort of overturning that and making the final order ineffective as of the date of the initial issuance. I just take all that out. In fact, let me get to the actual order so we can have the language. We can talk about the language that's changed. So in the findings, you'll see starting with paragraph 22, instead of the commission finding that the motion should be denied, it will be partially granted. I have an error there. It said partially granting, so I noted that. And then in paragraph 23, instead of saying that the commission disagrees with the movements, it would say that the commission agrees with the movements and staff that the reissuance of the amended final order nunc pro tunc is improper. The movements rightly point out, and then it cites the statute that section maintain the final order is operative and effective. Thus, there's no need to reissue the order as of the date of the initial issuance. I'm sorry. That's no, that's it. I'm sorry. Looks like it was crossed out. Thus, there's no need to reissue the order as of the date of the initial issuance of the final order. The commission has previously reissued the undisturbed portions of appealed rate case orders without using retroactive language. I actually have two sites, but I just had time to put one in. I cite to the PNM rate case from 2015 and the order on remand from 2020 that appeal. It says instead the final order should be reissued as of the date of the issuance of the mandate, or it could be as of today's date as well. But I did see there was another precedent that I saw that did it as of the date of the issuance of the mandate, because that is post appeal, but it's like the date that commission reobtained jurisdiction. Well, we can leave that out too if we want to avoid any kind of retroactive effect, given how contentious that has been. And then in paragraph 26, Commissioner Aguilera also had some revisions that were just to clarify or emphasize certain things. So in paragraph 26, this first sentence, though the commission does not decide the question here, the commission notes that, as the movements and staff have pointed out, the court's decision in Mountain States could potentially be interpreted as barring the potential adjustments. And I think it does make sense to put that in there just to really emphasize that, we're not deciding that issue now. It's somewhat unclear because Mountain States provides a pretty strong, broad holding about retroactive adjustments even after a judicial decision. But it doesn't really analyze what are the potential difference, the order that they're dealing with in that case versus this order. And so this order, of course, asks for more detailed analyses of the court's precedents, including Mountain States, for that reason. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fisk. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for the presentation and for looking further into the precedent. First, I guess I want to clarify that the order that we issued previously was not weighing in as to the effective date for any rates associated with the issues that were overturned by the Supreme Court.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Because the reissued order just left those holdings out and didn't replace them with anything. And then set a final order, another order be issued. And that order could be, could be completely prospective in nature in the sense that it would set rates that only recover going forward, or it could set rates that only that recover also the retroactive portion.
Right, correct. So it was requesting it established a process for how those issues would be handled after the issues were overturned. And so I just wanted to make that clarification.
Yes, that's right.
So I guess I see a couple of different arguments here. I think what I hear you saying is that the Nook-pro-Tunk language was unnecessary. In paragraph 23, the first statement is saying is agreeing that it was improper. So I just want to double check with you. Is your argument that it's unnecessary or that it's improper?
That's a good point, Commissioner Aguilar. We could use the word unnecessary there instead of improper, because that's what the rest of paragraph 23 is really saying, is that the statute covers it, so we don't have to do anything retroactive with regard to the reissuance. So we could change it to unnecessary. That's a better word. I mean, improper is more of like kind of a catch-all term, but I think unnecessary is really what I was getting at. So
Okay,
that would be a reasonable change to make.
okay. And given the precedent that you identified that did not use the Nook-pro-Tunk language, I think when we start to use new language, we could inadvertently create new precedent. And that is my concern here. I think the safer bet is to use the words we've used before, right? And I think in this case, we used a different phrase, and it may be innocuous potentially, but has created some ambiguity. And for that reason, I would support, I don't know if it's a partially grant or if it's a clarification, but I would maybe a partially grant,
Yes.
as to remove that language. Because I think what we're saying, and I think what you're explaining is that practically it does not make a difference as to the rates. It might be important in certain cases. In this one, it's not. But, you know, even if it is important in certain cases in the future, if we use that language now, it could be used, I guess, as precedent for something that we were not intending here.
Yes, I agree. I think it is clear to just leave the language out at this point. Obviously, it wasn't a concern for prior commissions with regard to whether the vacating an annulment was retroactive. So I think you're right. It could cause confusion. Obviously, the movements and staff interpreted the nunc-pro-tunc as relating directly to a potential retroactive adjustment. So I think that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Now I can see why Chair O'Connell was hesitant to discuss this matter. So we initially proposed it this way with the nunc-pro-tunc language, making the final order reissued effective as of the date of the rate case order, correct?
Yes.
But now we're saying, no, we made a mistake and we really should be dating it as of the date of our most recent order, the 28th of June, is that?
Actually, Commissioner Olson, I put in here as of the date we received the mandate, because that's when the commission
From the Supreme
regained
Court.
jurisdiction, which is not something, you know, again, there's some differences between among the various orders I looked at, but there was at least one order that issued as of that date. The two orders that were rate case orders just said reissued and re-adopted. Didn't say anything about the date, so it'd be effective as of the date of the order. The mandate versus order, I don't think would be any versus the date of today's order. I don't think would be an issue for anybody. But what this would be saying is yes, movements are correct because the statute provides that the final order remained effective during the pendency of the appeal. We don't need to reissue it retroactively. That stands. The statute is sufficient. We don't need to worry about the fact, you know, this idea that the vacating might have been retroactive.
Oh, okay, but if we issued the final order as of the date that the Supreme Court remanded it to us, would that in any way impact our ability to say that undercharges from the date of the rate decision up until now need to be collected?
Right, I mean, for the date of the final order, the commission's final order till up to
Yeah,
today's date. Yes.
the date of the final order on EPE's rate case to today, would we still have the ability to say that the undercharges during that period need to be collected?
Yes, Commissioner, that remains an open question. It's really the nunc-pro-tunc language just concerns whether, you know, the statute was sufficient to keep the order alive during that period, whether it wasn't. It still allows for the commission to issue an order prospectively that sets rates that includes the period during the pendency of the appeal, to include them or not include them.
Okay, and the paragraph 26 on the Mountain States case, you know, I'm just not sure that I would agree on the merits of that, and you know how much, you know, we should get into the merits at this point. So I suppose there's no harm in asking people what they think about that court precedent. But I guess at this point, it's hard for me to see how you could not say that we would have the authority to allow undercharges to be collected or overcharges to be refunded.
Well, Commissioner Nelson, I would say that Mountain State is a 1977 case, and it's what's cited by the movements and staff. And that does, they did bar an adjustment for a certain period as being retroactive rate making. And there had been some, this is what's not clear, there had been some judicial involvement that led to the issuance of the order. So it doesn't, the issuance of the order that was on appeal, and there was, but it's not, it's not clear that that's applicable to this situation, which is that you had a commission order that was on appeal, and you know, the court decided that that there were three holdings that, you know, three items that should not have been denied. And so it's there's, like I said, there wasn't much analysis, and I just think that could be developed more by the parties, and the cases that have come since may put a gloss on it.
Has there not been any case since 1977 where a PRC rate decision was appealed and adjusted in some fashion?
EPE cites a telecom case, the Quest Corporation case, as being the most on point. And I see it as somewhat ambiguous as to whether that's the most on point since that time. And there isn't any significant analysis by EPE of why that would control here. So, I
understand maybe there's not a lot of court precedent, but I would be surprised if the PRC hasn't made for decades an adjustment to rates. That would be surprising.
Well, a retroactive adjustment is possible that the commission has not. There are instances in which I'm aware of where a retroactive adjustment was issued by the commission based on the fact that there was some kind of notice to the utility. If it was an adjustment that would go against the utility, during the period that the rates were in place, that there might there's a line of cases said that if there's any kind of notice to the utility that they might have to actually adjust that period for rates, then it's not considered retroactive rate making because essentially they were in notice. What's interesting is I think one of the EPA cases that cited one of the cases that EPA cites from outside this jurisdiction, adopts that sort of concept for all cases about with regard to retroactive rate making, saying essentially that the utility is always on notice, or then the ratepayers are on notice that this an order of the commission is not of the utility regulator is not a final order in the sense that it can always be appealed. So I know that there have been adjustments that were retroactive in nature, that were based where the justification was that there had been notice to the utilities and to the ratepayers that the rates that were approved were interim rates, or could possibly be adjusted for a particular issue. For instance, I think I believe when the Jobs Act was passed, the tax reform, federal tax reform act was passed under the Trump administration. I believe that there had been some kind of notice that the commission would be ordering an adjustment to rates based on the tax change. And eventually the commission did order that adjustment, and there was a retroactive adjustment, but that was based on the idea that there had been notice to utilities.
Okay, and so essentially what we're doing here is we're just saying if we adopt this order, we would be saying we're gonna take out this nunc pro tunc language and we're gonna say the final order should be reissued as of the date of the Supreme Court mandate.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just go back to something that we talked about earlier in the meeting, that if we take no action, what is the result?
Mr. Chairman, if the commission takes no action between now and the 20th, the motion for a hearing will be deemed denied by operation of law, and the mandate order will stand as is, with the language as it is.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I mean, this has been very informational. I've learned a lot. Thank you. Seems like we're trying to perfect something in response to a motion that was fundamentally flawed. It was accusing the commission of doing something that the commission did not do. The rates don't change until the process that's laid out in the order is followed. The process allows all parties to make the arguments that they were making in this motion for rehearing. So just throwing this out here for discussion rather than working to perfect the words in this document. Feels like a viable path is do nothing on this.
And Mr. Chairman, I agree that's a viable path. Because I don't like, as I said, I think adding the nunc pro tunc language, did not have any of the effects that the movements or staff thought it would have. And I do think, Commissioner Aguilar has a point. Why include the language? It might confuse people, because it seemed to confuse some people. But I also agree that, in the end, the language was okay in this specific instance, and the movement sort of and staff overinterpreted how that related to a potential retroactive adjustment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that allowing it to go into effect by operation of law is an option. I think we can also issue a brief order to say that we will grant this for consideration and then issue an order on the merits at the next meeting. The concern that I have here is not about this order. It's about the precedent that we would be creating, and concern that we might put something in an order here that could be used either against us or against the public interest in the future. And that is why I would clarify the order. That being said, I think if we allow this to go into effect by operation of law, or if we approve the order as initially drafted, I might be willing to vote for that order, subject to issuing a concurrence to further explain why I voted for it, and that I don't think the order was creating new precedent.
Well, what I heard is it will be denied by operation of law, not that it will go into effect by operation.
Right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I misspoke. Yes.
Right. And so
It'll be
then
denied.
I hear your concern about messing up the precedent here. Also feels like we can avoid that box of Pandora's by not touching this thing that was flawed on its face.
Well, if it's denied by operation of law, then the order as issued would still stand. So that would be the precedent
Okay, so your concern is with the order that,
that we issued a couple weeks ago.
okay, that's different than what I understood.
I'd like to follow up with a question to Mr. Fisk, if I may. So if we allow this motion to just be denied and let the nunc pro tunc language stand in our order, when we ultimately make a decision on the rates, we could still issue that decision as of the date of the Supreme Court mandate. Couldn't we, despite the language in this order?
Yes, Commissioner, yes, the commission was still. I'm sorry, the commission is still, whether or not the commission denies this or partially grants this, the commission is open, it doesn't affect what the commission can do going forward in terms of when setting prospective rates, setting them as of the date of the mandate. Although I would guess we probably, I don't know if using the date of the mandate, it would be the best idea for that, because that could be considered retroactive rate make. If the commission eventually decides that there is a retroactive rate making issue with regard to going back, the commission might, we might get an objection even for the period from the mandate to the issuance of the eventual order in this case. But I would say from the date of that of an order that actually sets rates prospectively, this does not affect the ability of the commission to issue that order and either to include the retroactive adjustment or not include it. This order relates because this order actually says, with regard to the issue of retroactive rate making, it's prematurely raised, so it can be raised again. It should be raised. If the movers want to raise it, they should raise it in their July 26th response to EP's filing. And so it changes nothing except taking out the nunc pro tunc language with regard to the order. It reissues the final order. So it doesn't affect anything going forward. That wouldn't change either way, whether it's the order from yesterday or today.
Right, so under the partially grant order, we're not saying we made a mistake. We're just saying the words we used were unnecessary. We didn't have to say that, right? That's why I'm saying practically.
So we didn't have to reissue the final order. Is that what we're saying?
No, that we didn't need to use the words nunc pro tunc.
Okay, and that instead it would be better to reissue the final order as of the date of the mandate of the return from the Supreme Court.
Yeah, yes, and that's that would be, and it would be saying, the movements point out that the statute provides that it stays in the order stayed in effect during the pendency of the appeal, and that's good enough. We don't need to be concerned with whether the court's decision had a retroactive effect. We'll just assume it didn't, because that's what the commission has assumed before. Because the commission has simply issued orders reaffirming and reissuing, the undisturbed portions of appeal orders without making them retroactive. So apparently, with the understanding that the court's decision isn't retroactive, so they can rely upon the fact that the order has been in place all that time, and that's not changed by the court's decision.
Okay, thank you.
How do we want to proceed? Make a motion?
I will make a motion. I move to approve the order partially granting joint motion for rehearing that we received this morning. So this would be the alternate order. And then I'll add a little bit more explanation on paragraph 26. I had the same questions you did, Commissioner Ellison. I think you're basically asking the same questions I was asking yesterday. What have we done in the past? And then you also raised the same concern in this paragraph 26. About, are we putting our thumb in the scale on the scale when we don't need to? This is something Russell and I discussed yesterday. I would also be okay with eliminating the first sentence in paragraph 26, leaving only the last sentence that is asking the commenters to provide input, detailed analysis of mountain states.
And Commissioner Aguilera, I think that does make sense if you want to avoid, any, it gives the instruction that we want to give without, without, as you said, putting a thumb on the scale or sort of highlighting something that we think might be an issue. It just says, please do this.
Yeah. So to clarify or restate my motion, I move to approve the order partially granting joint motion for rehearing, subject to deleting the first paragraph. I'm sorry, the first sentence in paragraph 26.
And Commissioner Aguilera, could I clarify? Then also in paragraph 23, the first sentence would say that the reissuance non pro tunc is unnecessary.
Yes.
We have a second?
Second.
Any discussions before we vote? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellison.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
So next item on the agenda, we're moving into discussion and potential action. First item is follow on from the June 21st meeting, where we went to bi-weekly meetings. So presentation from Mr. Cameron from General Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're talking about the same thing here. I was prepared to discuss the Open Meetings Act resolution.
What did I say?
I think
You mentioned our change to the meeting schedule.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Okay,
One for the other.
excellent.
And that's pro tunc.
Let's not go there again. So, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, you have in your binders or electronically a draft of a proposed resolution to adopt an open meetings policy for 2023. The Open Meetings Act statute requires that the commission, not the commission, but any entity subject to the Open Meetings Act adopt at least annually a statement of what notice is reasonable. And so that's what I have done for you. You will probably notice if you looked at the previous resolutions that this is a much shorter version of the resolution. Last time around, or from 2022, that it was 9 pages long, I think. My version is 3 pages long. That was in response to commissioners requesting for some streamlining and brevity in the resolution. After carefully considering the Open Meetings Act and what it requires, I was able to do that. So, a large part of this new resolution is adopted from the Attorney General's guidance on the Open Meetings Act. And within that guidance, there is a template that can be used by any organization, any entity to adopt a resolution. And so I based quite a bit of this on that. I did make a few changes to it earlier this week. Those changes in the version that you have now are in red and also highlighted. And I'm happy to take any questions or more discussion.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate the on pointness of this. I mean, there was quite a bit of just repetition of what the act said in the previous thing, so I didn't think that was necessary. And to me, the point of this is just to make sure the commission and state of New Mexico is on board with how we're going to have these meetings. So Shorter also explains that better. So thank you for that. And then the only thing I didn't see in here that I know we've run into over the course of the past 7 months is what happens when the building's closed. So if you could explain how we'll deal with that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, in going through the previous version of the resolution and then working on this newer draft, I think that part of the previous resolution was not necessary. And it felt overly restrictive, and in discussion with the commissioners, it seems like that is what has occurred as most recently as this past winter, in terms of the resolution says, you know, if a certain entity, you know, you follow a certain entity's schedule in terms of closing, if they close, you can't hold a meeting. And my understanding is that that had operated to really hamstring the commission in terms of fulfilling their statutory duties to you know, take care of the business of regulation, in that meetings were closed at the last minute. I think a better way to handle it is to kind of leave it open and to use the website and the regular notice procedures to let the public know if a meeting is going to be canceled. And then you're not tied into any one particular entity who is doing cancellations or not. And I think that is completely fine with the way the Opens Meeting Act is written, and especially the way that it speaks to this notice or this resolution. Again, it's a determination of what notice is reasonable.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I mean, you're hitting, I think, the issue on the head, that we were relying on communications from somebody else. And then what we were going to do was going to be a reaction to what somebody else said. So what I'm hearing is we should own it, and we will communicate if we have to make a change because something unusual happened, like it snowed so much Santa Fe is closed. So anyway, I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this?
I just, want to say thank you for putting this together. I also appreciate the brevity and that you use the Attorney General's template to build this. There's one item, and this might be directly from the Attorney General's template, but it's item 4 with regard to emergency meetings that says it may be called by the chairman or a majority of the members. I think I suggested deleting by the chairman or a majority of the members. I think in an emergency situation where health, safety, or property of the citizens is threatened, I think it would be better for any commissioner to be able to suggest an emergency meeting.
Yeah, I guess your challenge then will be quorum.
Right.
But
Yes.
any questions, Commissioner Ellison?
I have a sort of a similar follow-up question. So a special meeting would be considered any meeting outside of this bi-weekly schedule, but it would be a meeting of the full commission. So what I'm getting at is, so like if we wanted to call a workshop that maybe one commissioner would attend, would that be considered a special meeting?
That's a good question, Commissioner. I don't know the answer to that.
But normally, I guess, as it's written here, you're thinking of a meeting of the commission that is not on the standard bi-weekly schedule.
Correct.
And the language you've got here is, a special meeting may be called by the chairman or a majority of the members. How would that work? So Chair O'Connell could call it, or Commissioner Aguilera and I could agree that there needs to be one. Is that the proposal?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, that is the proposal to tie this into Commissioner Aguilera's question. This part is in the Attorney General's template. It is not in, to the best of my knowledge, in the actual Open Meetings Act, this requirement. So it is not necessarily required. And I think your question, Mr. Commissioner, speaks to the fact that this entity is pretty unique in that there are three of you. And so this seems to speak to something different in terms of, you asked the question, right? So it's the chairman or the majority, which is essentially the chairman or the rest of the commission. Right, exactly. So it sort of doesn't fit that well in this instance.
Well, then I'm just thinking through the practicalities of that. If any one of us calls a meeting by ourselves and don't have a real good reason for it that's obvious, or find at least one commissioner who agrees with us, you might be meeting with yourself. And so good luck to you on that. So anyway, just thinking through the fact that there's three of us, that I mean, just practically a meeting where we need to issue a notice because we're planning to take an action, that's going to be rooted in something real that's happening. An emergency might be something real, a case that's coming up. So we need a session to talk about that. I mean, any meeting that's just the chairman wants to have a meeting probably isn't going to succeed. So anyway, I think it's practically okay to just, yeah, I don't have a problem with striking the chairman on that and just say majority of the members, because I think it's silly for any one of us to think we can call a meeting by ourselves and expect that meeting to be a valuable use of anybody's time.
And another idea could just be to say, may be called by any member of the commission. And as you say, we're gonna know that unless there's some support behind it, it's not gonna make sense. So maybe just to cut red tape, we could say it can be called by any member of the commission, which practically speaking, we're not going to do unless, there's a good reason and there's some support.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, on that note, and I think this comes back to your original question, if a special meeting were called by one member and or if only one member were there, if there's no quorum, then you can't take any. Well, there could be a meeting, but there can't be a meeting where any action is being taken.
Yeah, I mean, we can also just say special meetings may be called with 3 days' notice. Similar to what I was proposing for emergency meetings.
Right, and in my copy, that is stricken out that by the chairman or a majority of the members on point 4. So on point 4, we don't specify who is doing the calling. It says may be called. So if we wanted to mirror that, then we would say special meetings may be called.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not hearing a lot of debate along this and the changes we have. One of them's already been made and the other one is make the similar change in paragraph 3 to match more or less what's in paragraph 4. So just offering that as a foundation for discussion on what you think next actions could be. In theory, we could vote on this to adopt this resolution now and let Mr. Cameron handle the edits and publishing it based on what we've talked about. We could let him edit it and throw it in board effect and we'll adopt it at a future meeting. I mean, I would put it on the agenda for 2 weeks from now, because like I say, that looks like we are well within reach. So anyway, just what's your pleasure, Commissioner?
I mean, I would prefer to vote on this now, if we don't have any disagreement, but.
Sure, and I hate to split hairs on this. I mean, we can obviously say may be called upon 3 days notice. But isn't it better to be a little more specific? And if our intention is to say that it may be called by a majority of the members, then let's say it. Or if our intention is that it may be called by any member of the commission, then let's say that. Just the may be called language seems ambiguous. And I would think that we would want to avoid ambiguity in this kind of a document.
Yeah, in that spirit, then I would say the edit on here would just be strike the chairman or.
I would be okay with that too.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. All right, well then I move that we'll adopt a resolution proposed with the edit on paragraph 3 being strike the words the chairman or from the first sentence. And so that's the motion, and then just knowing that we're all looking at the same red line that has some other strike throughs that I didn't have to mention because I already forgot, but
I second.
call the roll, please.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellison.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Okay, so the next item is mine, and it's a follow-on from a conversation that we'd had at a prior open meeting. It's discussion and potential action. I'll go ahead and frame up the discussion and then really would love to hear from both of you whether we're ready for action on this or not, because I mean, broadly, the idea is that we're out there working on behalf of New Mexico, that things come up that require, can be amplified by us acting, or we might need to take an action in the our duties, like for example, in 2 weeks, I'm going to SPP Regional State Committee meeting.
Mr. Chair?
There will be votes.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
I apologize. But I think we jumped ahead on the agenda.
Oh. Well, I'm the chair.
I understand that. But I don't think you're operating the, maybe you need to.
And no,
That's why
this is
Mr.
why you gave me a
that's why Mr.
gavel and rubber.
Maybe I should. That's why Mr. Lundin came up, because I think he.
Yeah, no,
Next, so.
I appreciate that and.
Just wanted to
frankly,
clarify.
As
And-
we've
and
already
it's up to you.
established earlier in this meeting. I don't always read things in a straight line, so, yeah, I will stop bloviating and turn it over to Mr. Lundin. For a juicier discussion, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, apologies for my interruption.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that, Chairman and Commission. So what we have here is a potential order of discussion on case number 23-00119 UT, which is not quite a docket yet, but hopefully it will be soon. The matter of a commission rulemaking to amend NMPRC Rule 1.22 NMAC entitled Public Regulation Commission Rules of Procedure. So without, speaking for anyone here, I believe we're on discussion today and not regular action because there was maybe some confusion with multiple drafts of the order and some late edits that came in yesterday. But before we get to the order, I would like to talk a little bit about the history of this matter. So, as earlier this year, we had certain issues in cases, and the specifics don't really matter yet, but it caused us to take a closer look at our procedural rules. And through April and May and continuing today, there's been a lot of internal work done to look at the procedural rule and to provide edits for it to get it up to date. Now, in the middle of June, on June 14th, the Chief of Staff presented to you on rulemaking matters. And it was Ms. Corey's recommendation that for Rule 1.22, while the internal work is going on drafting the rule or edits to the rule, that we issue a notice of inquiry on a more limited subset of issues, kind of targeted issues that we can address while the broader picture is continuously being worked on. So with that, I met with Commissioner O'Connell and McLean to discuss kind of the initial steps on that targeted inquiry, because Commissioner O'Connell has special experience with some of the issues that we were considering, such as discovery and filings. So we had a meeting. Commissioners O'Connell's assistant Nick Lee volunteered to take the initial effort to draft the notice of inquiry. His initial draft was very helpful for me in developing my own draft version of it. Both of which have been uploaded to Port Effect, and you may have seen both. So I think initially maybe that could have been confusing, and I apologize if there's multiple drafts of the order being circulated. However, I've worked with Commissioner Ellison over the last day or two to develop edits to my order, and as well as input from Commissioner Aguilera on some aspects of the order. So today I propose and I recommend that the commission adopt the initial order opening docket and initiating inquiry. It would create this rulemaking docket in the informal stage. It would start the inquiry, which is basically a bench request with several questions related to the targeted issues. The issues to consider relate to discovery, filing limits, tolling of suspension periods, stipulations, and emerging technologies. I don't know how detailed you want me to go into each of these, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page, I would like to share my screen and show you the red line copy of my draft order that incorporates Commissioner Ellison's edits, as well as input from Commissioner Aguilera. Give me one sec to do this. So my my general take with things like inquiries and bench requests is that it's pretty open-minded, you know, whatever information requests we want to include, we should include. It can only inform us more and help us move forward. So any recommendations or any proposals to me to include questions, I'm open to them. So what I tried to do with my order was take, you know, all the I guess necessary or important bits that I gleaned from McLee's draft, combine them with some of my own ideas, obviously incorporate Commissioner Ellison's ideas, and I also got Commissioner Aguilera. So if there's anything in this order that doesn't, I guess, check all the boxes from Chairman, your the draft from McLee that you originally looked at, please let me know and we can add those to it. However, I think you were all interested in talking about the stuff that was added yesterday. So I have the first part of that on the screen, and I can make it a little bit smaller so it fits. But this first findings and conclusions, paragraph 6, relates to tolling. It was added just to kind of set up the issue of tolling that arose earlier this year in another docket. And then there's corresponding to this a few questions in the bench request that would go out to parties. So before we move on from the tolling issue, I would open it up for discussion or questions.
Well, I guess my problem is I can't read that. And so I'm looking for a red line that matches what I'm
Okay.
seeing up there, and is it in board effect?
No, sir. I created this red line this morning right before the meeting, so I'll have to send it to you.
Okay.
I should only do that. Very quickly.
Can you send that to me before all of us?
Is this version substantially the same as the one sent out yesterday?
Yes, Judy.
Amer sent around.
Yeah, Judy sent around your edits yesterday. It's basically the same. The red line shows the changes from your most recent version versus my original version. So
Okay.
it just it eliminates one of like the middle steps there to make it a little bit more clear on what.
But the content is the same as that which Ms. Amer sent out yesterday. Okay.
Okay, I got it. So. Thank you. And I guess just observation for discussion, I appreciate the work you've put into this. This rule is a feast, so it's interesting once you look at it. The number of topics you could choose to take on is lengthy. I like this one because I think there's a theme that links all these different topics together. So thank you for that. And then just reminder where we're at in the process is NOI. So we're asking people to comment. So I won't be surprised if people suggest that the scope of this increases. But I like what you've got out here in terms of getting the ball rolling, giving a template for people to provide comments on that then will lead to a good NOPR. Because as we've discussed before, especially a rule this big, succeeding at a rulemaking, having a good NOPR is a great first step. Then just something I want to say, because I've struggled, frankly, the biggest struggle I've had is on tone. Because I am afraid that by asking people a question, they think we've got an opinion on it, and it's too early in the process for that. So, for example, just the idea of asking people to talk about whether we should favor settlements or not. That doesn't mean suddenly we don't favor settlements. It's where we're at right now is wanting to collect a discussion of that. And I think it's timely, and I think it's probably been 15, 20 years since the commission's had that discussion. So I'm looking forward to that in terms of responses to this, but just wanted to be clear to myself and share that with folks who I hope will respond to this, that emphasize where we're at in the process is collecting information. There is no thumb on the scale at the moment. Next step is I added some stuff that might look kind of weird around artificial intelligence. So just, again, we don't want to open this rule every year, but there's emerging technology going on out there that my understanding of it is will help people write many more pages of testimony faster. I can see how that could be very valuable if you can suddenly have access to every order the commission's ever done and ask your computer, summarize this for me, so you don't have to do the work. So I could see how emergence of artificial intelligence could really make our process better. I can also see how, hey, computer, generate 5,000 public comments that are unique. We might see that too. So what do we do with that? So that's really the germ of where that stuff is in there, is thinking about, is there something we need to do now? I've got a suggestion on that, but I'm not gonna, again, thumbs not on the scale, so I want to see what everybody else has to say before I offer that suggestion. And then lastly, cybersecurity is a big issue, especially for our utilities. And then I've learned since taking this job, state government's under attack from cyber threats all the time. So we've got some processes like electronic filings that we want to be more efficient. We want to make the process more accessible, but we also have to do it recognizing the fact that some practices like dodgy file sharing programs might create a vulnerability on cybersecurity. So those are kind of the forward thinking things that I think are in here, in addition to let's just sit down and have a conversation again around these big topics like tolling and how to proceed. So that's just, again, offering that as my view and topic for discussion in addition to this, what you've provided us. Commissioners, do you have any other questions or thoughts on this?
Yeah, I guess I would maybe try to explore whether this is actually an NOI or if we're just, the order says, the title says initial order opening docket and initiating inquiry. And I think what I heard you say is that we're asking questions. You raised the paragraph that asks about stipulations. I also want to emphasize the message that this does not mean that we are intending to change the rule. And that's why I bring up the title of this order, because I don't think this is a notice of intent necessarily that we're thinking about changing or how we view stipulations. That issue in particular is the one that stands out to me as why I want to emphasize that it's not a notice of intent. I think it's okay to ask the questions with respect to that topic, but I don't want to suggest that my views are changing with respect to stipulations.
Yeah, so NOI was the term we used just because that's my understanding of where we're at in the process. Is there a different, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I don't want the form of this thing to reinforce the thing I'm hoping to avoid.
Well, I guess I don't want the headline to be New Mexico PRC is intending to eliminate stipulations. Right, to that end, with respect to that paragraph in particular, I also would like to, if we do issue this today, talk about softening that language, making it a bit more neutral. If we don't issue this order today, then I would like some time to propose some edits.
Do you have any discussion?
Yes, I guess just by way of background, I recall that one of the early cases we all voted on was regarding the suspension of the tolling period brought by SPS. And after that, we sort of were well down the path to initiating a rulemaking change on that. And, then the point was made that, there really are multiple areas in this 1.2.2 administrative code that, we really need to rethink, and wouldn't it be better to look at all of them at once? And I think that's what the genesis of this, and I guess I was surprised not to see the tolling on there, because I thought that was one of the things that we wanted to fix. And I guess I didn't consider, gee, there's nothing stopping us from in subsequent meetings having other docket openings related to 1.2.2. So I guess this is a long-winded way of saying, initially I thought, this is our one and only chance to put in everything we're concerned about in 1.2.2, hence sort of my rush to get a couple things included. Now I'm not sure the urgency was there, but I do think that these are relevant and important topics. We've talked about the tolling of the suspension period a lot, and I think that's fairly clear. The formal stipulation is something I definitely have concerns about, and so I wouldn't go so far as to say I've made a decision on how I think about this, but I would say I have some concerns about it, and that's what has precipitated my proposal to include it in this order. And I can talk a little more about it than is in here. I think we're seeing it play out now. One other concern I have with it is that when the parties do reach a stipulation, that the burden of asking questions of witnesses falls entirely on the hearing examiner and the commissioners. Nobody is cross-examining each other because that's the agreement. And I do think that putting all the burden on us makes it more challenging to discover more information and dig deeper. I certainly also have concerns about the black box nature, and what is it that, the parties don't want disclosed? Why is it that they're not willing to specify, what is going into the rate requirement? And, it's just a suspicion, but sometimes I think that the utility has decided we need a revenue requirement of X, and let's just put what we need in the black box to obtain that revenue requirement. So there may be nothing in the black box except, a number that we'd like to see in our revenue requirement. And the fact is, we just don't know. And it's troublesome to me, and I think it's worth exploring. So I would recommend that we think about it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is agreement on topics that are in there. Frankly, my reaction was tone. We need to work on that to get to a more neutral setting. So I guess my proposal would be, let's take another 2 weeks to work on tone, just so we make sure we get that right, because there's a lot of things I'm concerned with, but I don't think now's the time to insert that into the document. That we need to hear from everybody and decide based on that.
Yeah, I would appreciate more time with this as well. And I agree with you. I think, we can improve this by shifting the tone a little bit. I think there are good questions that we have here, and I definitely do see a lot of benefits coming out of an eventual NOPR and final rule. So we have this under discussion and potential action. I don't, do we need to make a motion to, I don't think we do, right? To take this on 2 weeks from now?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I don't believe that you do.
My handy Robert's Rules calculator doesn't address that question. So yeah, I know when we put the agenda together and we put it there, it was so we'd have the opportunity to choose not to act was the intention, but also expected the process would benefit from the discussion. So anyway, the intent of why this was on the agenda has been fulfilled.
And I certainly don't have an issue with taking a couple more weeks and making the document more neutral. My concern is that we discuss the topic. Yeah, I guess I did want to add, the AI area did catch me off guard a little bit, because I guess from my perspective, it's not a problem right now, but, I fully accept that it well could be, and it's an issue that we probably need to think about.
Yeah, it caught me off guard too, but I can, you can quickly see why it makes sense to ask the questions.
Okay, so your reward for your hard work, Robert, is more hard work. I appreciate you getting us to where we're at. I think what we're looking at now is just a couple more passes on the red line. And so I would expect you'll be back in 2 weeks and we'll be ready to vote then.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'll work with Commissioner Ellison and Judy on getting those.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And then also thanks to our technical advisors who were working together on this, so. If nothing else, we're building a foundation of teamwork up on the third floor, so that's great. Okay, so next item is the one I jumped the gun with. Limited delegation of authority. I'll just cut to the chase. I think for efficiency, we should feel free to act in ways that are limited. We've been having conversations about where really the bar is in terms of public action that requires discussion and votes in these meetings. So what I was trying to do was come up with a way that we felt empowered and free to work in a timely fashion on behalf of New Mexico while we're out there working on our committees. So I asked my technical advisor, McLee, to lead this process. What he's provided us is two different paths forward, either a resolution or individual motions. As I was working through those in preparation for today, I could see maybe both of those being a Pandora's box, because if it's a resolution, do we have to revise the resolution every time a new thing comes up? If it's a motion, do we just pass 100 motions and then have a hard time keeping track of them? So I'm still committed to this idea of formally authorizing action. So like the example I was giving before we got back on the agenda is I'm going to be at the regional state committee meeting for SPP in a week and a half. There will be votes there. There's been a big process that leads to the votes. I consulted with New Mexicans that are affected by those votes, and I'm going to vote at those meetings. And I think that's should be expected. You should expect me to do that. Do I need some formal recognition of that? Don't know. And then how should that recognition happen? So anyway, I'll left it on this for discussion, potential action. I'd love to hear your thoughts right now. And then I'll just throw out there for discussion of future work is maybe instead of trying to identify topics and committee assignments, that we just adopt a resolution that says here's the line of things that have to be handled in these meetings. Anything below that line, do it and report back at your first convenience. So anyway, that's probably more talking than I should have done on that, but I'll turn it over to Commissioner Aguilera, Commissioner Ellison. Love to hear your opinion on where we're at and where we should go.
That's for me. I like the concept of being able to be more efficient, and I think sort of this idea of delegating authority on certain things is helpful. With respect to the RSC, I think we already discussed this, that you were on there. I fully expected that you would be voting on matters that would come up for me as well, right, on the BOTSR and MSC for the Markets Plus. And I like the idea. I have to say I don't necessarily prefer the formality of this, because I feel like it might be boxing us in inadvertently. And so I think we've already made motions on some of these things. It makes sense to somehow keep track of them, right? Because we might forget. But I do think, if there's turnover, there's a new commissioner, we would need to revise all of these. I also think that some of these topics are premature. For example, for me, the motion here says that I would lead any broadband related matters, I'm sorry, a rulemaking. I think that could make sense, but I don't think we need to decide that now. I think we can decide these things as we go and we have more information. So I would prefer to not have a resolution, and probably prefer not to have these proposed motions either.
Yeah, no, first of all, I make sure McLean knows I appreciate the work you put into it, but it was one of those deals where sometimes you don't realize that you're rearranging the furniture wrong until you've done it and see what the room looks like. So do you have anything you'd like to add to this, Commissioner Ellison?
Yes, so I guess a few thoughts about it. I remember that one sort of impetus for this was when you and Commissioner Aguilera were at this Western conference, and there was the question about signing a letter. I think it was to NARUC regarding transmission policy, and that you weren't sure if you could do that. And I think that topic bears some some exploration or thought. It would be warranted. I mean, as I've said before, I think each one of us should feel free to sign letters with our stating our viewpoint, and maybe an attorney could correct me, but I don't see any problem with that letter being circulated among us to see who wants to sign off on this letter, to say, this is a letter to say, a senator or whomever is saying this is the position of the PRC. I generally think that there isn't the kind of urgency where you would need to put that in place. That generally there's time to bring it up at a meeting or even call a special meeting, discuss it, and vote on it. At the same time, I do recognize that when we're part of these committees, such as the SPP committee or the Bosser committee, that we have a vote. The representative on that committee has a vote, and that's fully expected. That whoever is our representative is going to vote how they feel they should vote. And I don't think that necessarily represents the commission's views as a whole, but you as a voting member have a vote, and you may be the representative from New Mexico or from the commission, but you've decided and so that vote is valid. Whether or not we say that reflects the full commission or not, I think this model of asking someone to spearhead an initiative from more of a a procedural and organizational aspect makes a lot of sense, and to organize and put something together, yet all of us have to vote on it. I think that that is a good model. And I think we've been doing that informally. So I guess I'm also a little hesitant about the formality of this. at the same time, I do appreciate the thought here that, that any decision made under this authority would need to be presented back to the commission so that there could be some, monitoring and, personally, I do trust the two of you not to, not to do something really strange and say, the commission has decided, I don't know, pick your wild idea. I fully trust that that would not happen. But at the same time, I just wonder what we're getting from this. If, for example, Commissioner Aguilera is working on broadband issues and is speaking to members of the legislature, would it be helpful to say, the commission's position on this or that topic is this, or is it sufficient to say my position as a commissioner is this? And, would we want to just take if you feel the commission needs to have a position, should we take a vote on it? And then you've got a position. So, I guess I'm just raising a lot of thoughts here, but, I understand the spirit of it, that, sometimes it would be nice to be able to make a decision on behalf of the commission on the spot. I understand that and appreciate the thought that went into this.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully this time spent on this is an investment in efficiency because we've talked about it a lot at these open meetings, but what I heard was we did vote on which committees we were going to be on, and we should view that as the delegation of authority we need. And then I think, frankly, things are getting a little more active in discussions among other commissions and us. I think that's just a natural outgrowth of the process, that people are aware of us and know that we have backgrounds or knowledge that they think could help them with their job, so that, we're getting more requests than we had been in earlier months. I think that's what initiated me thinking, gee, let's get in front of this. So anyway, what I'll propose is that this has been, again, succeeded on the agenda, that we had a good discussion. Probably no further action today. And now that we've had this discussion, if something comes up and you want to know, you want an opinion of the three of us, let's just commit to bringing it to these meetings in the future. But I don't even think I have a follow-up at the moment to ask McLeod to do.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I agree with that approach, and just wanted to add that sometimes we're just, we're going to have to make decisions as an individual commissioner on these committees that we've been assigned to. There might be times where something is big enough that we might want to bring it back so that we can all talk through it. And I think that's just going to be on, the commissioner that's on the spot to make that decision. And some of these decisions could potentially be big enough to be brought, I know the RSC deals with cost allocation, for example, some of those could be very impactful. So I think we just need to make sure that we're communicating here, and yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, that was kind of my wake-up call, was the RSC, because we will be voting on transmission cost allocation waivers. And if the waiver happens, the utilities in New Mexico will be picking up more transmission costs. So the votes are real and they do have an impact. Having said that, I'm one of 11 states, I think, on that committee, so it's not like I'll vote in the interest of what I believe is the best interest of New Mexico. That doesn't mean I win, but we'll find out. Okay, so I would propose let's move to next agenda item, RPS progress by IOUs. And then just heads up, when we move to these bi-weekly meetings, expected the meetings to be longer, started the meetings later at 10 o'clock. So I resolved to myself that we would break at noon. But since we're within striking range of the end of this agenda, I'm gonna recommend we just continue with it and let Ms. Parks take all the time you need with this presentation. Yeah. You push it'll turn green when it's on. There you go.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm here on behalf of the utility staff to report on the RPS compliance data to include on the PRC website that's in the process of being updated. Commissioner Ellison, thank you for asking for a report from us on the presentation of this data. And Ed Realkoff assisted me with the presentation. And we're presenting here the RPS compliance numbers that provide a picture of New Mexico's progress toward the goals of the Renewable Energy Act and the ETA, together with other voluntary renewable energy generation information. Today, we're proposing to add the most recent 3 years of RPS compliance figures to the New Mexico PRC website for communication and education to the public. The purpose of this discussion today is to convey staff suggestions for a visual presentation of the RPS data for your review for inclusion on the website. Next slide. Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so we're going to start with the Public Service Company of New Mexico because PNM's RPS reporting categories include 4 pieces of information to note first. You'll see on the bottom part of the bar chart in blue is most importantly showing the RECs required to meet 20% RPS compliance in megawatt hours. Utilities are currently mandated to meet 20% of their retail sales with renewable energy sources, and that is what is shown here in blue, the compliance section. Next in orange is a small amount of generation shown as excess or surplus energy that was generated but not needed to be applied to the 20% RPS mandate for that year. And so they can bank or apply it to future years. They have, the utility can bank their RECs up to 4 years hence. The gray section indicates the utilities, went to the wrong slide. Indicates the utilities voluntary sales tariff RECs. These are programs where the customer voluntarily participates in a program to pay a rate associated with utility investment in renewable energy. Finally, the gold indicates renewable energy generated at a customer location off-grid. Again, these megawatt hours are not associated with RECs, but they are renewable energy megawatt hours generated in New Mexico. So adding up the compliance in blue is what is required to be reported and met by renewables. And then the other 3 color bands indicate additional renewable energy megawatt hours that are produced in New Mexico. And staff is recommending a bar chart with these data to be included on the website.
Sparks, could I clarify something? The customer here, I guess I'll have to name names. So, you know, there's one particular very large customer that's being served by a couple of wind farms and a solar farm. So that would be Facebook.
Yes.
So is that the customer that we're seeing here
Yes.
entirely, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
So that's in customer, not in voluntary.
That's correct. That's customer generated offsite. The voluntary is any ratepayer that wants to contribute to they pay a rate, and I believe the utilities invest in renewable energy. So it's a voluntary program. But it's not rooftop solar. It's strictly a voluntary, I think, rate-based investment program.
And just to, clarify with Facebook or Meta in particular, the deal was that they would get the renewable energy credits, so they're not available to P&M, but so P&M cannot count them towards its compliance with the RPS mandate, but it is renewable energy on the grid.
Yeah, I guess I'm just surprised that voluntary is on an order of magnitude with customer. And then other question is, does customer include anything that's behind the meter? Or is this all?
So like distributed generation or
Yeah.
rooftop solar? No, the customer generation right now only includes Meta, the Facebook.
Because there are RECs generated behind the meter that then P&M uses for the blue compliance part. There's
And then-
also RECs generated behind the meter that P&M doesn't use for, so just trying to make sure behind the meter is treated consistently here. And again, I guess I gotta have voluntary unpacked for me to understand what that is, because it's just surprising that it's on a par with.
That surprises me too, that the Sky Blue program, I think, is the one that P&M has, that it would be so large.
Well, the RECs are only the blue. So any distributed generation that includes utility owned RECs, that would be included in those numbers. Yes, in 2022, P&M had over 1 million megawatt hours of voluntary sales tariff. This is significantly much bigger than previous 2 years. So that number is actually deducted from their overall retail sales to come up with the net retail sale. And then they base 20% off that net retail sale to come up with a 20% mandate. I'll have a graph on that actually shortly.
And on the distributed solar, just to be clear, there shouldn't be any just pure distributed solar. If there is any, it should be because the RECs are being purchased. Is that right?
Yes.
And so that would probably fall into this, blue or orange
Right.
bands, the small amount of RECs that are being
That's correct.
purchased.
If the REC is purchased by the utility, it's in the blue or the orange, which is banked at a different year.
And what is the 20%?
The 20% is what is currently mandated to be, is the RPS goal. 20% needs of the retail sale of the utility needs to be met with renewable energy. And so that's a straight math calculation. We can come up with that 20%, and either they meet that 20% or they exceed it and bank, because they don't need to apply all of what they might generate. If it's like 21 or 22%, they just need to apply the 20% of RECs, and they can bank the remaining. Or sometimes in the past, they haven't met the 20%. And so there's a deficit.
Yeah, that's where I'm getting tripped up is for 2020, there is no excess.
It's
For
very little.
2021 there,
It's very
so
little
you
in
just
2020.
can't see it.
Barely can see it, yes. That's
So
correct.
the blue bar is 20% of total sales.
Correct,
Okay,
and they've met it.
I guess sorry, I'm an engineer, so there's a dimension of numbers on here that isn't reflected, which is the total sales changes for each year.
Let me,
Right.
yes, it does. Let me just show you these other two, because we have a table of data to support the questions that you're asking about the data behind the bar charts. Do we have the next slide, Patrick? And I talked about the gray, right? Yeah. Okay, so next we have Southwestern Public Service, SPS. And we see their required recs of around 1.5 million megawatt hours of renewables that meet their mandated compliance requirement. In 2022, SPS generated a surplus of renewable energy megawatt hours, largely due to wind and also some solar energy. Next slide is quickly EPE. Finally, we have El Paso Electric compliance and progress toward RPS goals as reported by EPE. And these bar charts are helpful visually to reflect the RPS compliance data submitted by the utilities and show the additional renewable energy that is produced in New Mexico, also reported to the PRC. While not RECs, these megawatt hours are in addition to RPS goals. The RPS reports are significantly large and include financial and generation documentation information that is used to calculate RECs and show the megawatt hours of clean energy production. Staff reviews the various sections of the RPS reports to track RPS compliance and the economics associated with compliance. So the next slide, please, Patrick. These are the tables that show the reported data. There's a lot of other reported data that we did not include on these particular tables. But these data serve to create the bar charts shown previously. The tables would be behind the bar charts on the website as a source of information. And again, as a note, the compliance percent in the last column is associated with the RECs used for the RPS compliance as shown in column 1. Currently, 20% of retail sales is required to be met with renewables, so any additional renewable energy can be banked for 4 years. The percent does not include the voluntary excess or customer generation megawatt hours. This renewable energy generation in New Mexico is in addition to the RECs noted under the compliance column. And then the last slide, Patrick, is this shows just a comparison across the utilities for calendar year 2022. So it shows all of their RPS compliance progress for that year. You can see the comparison, for example, between PNM and SPS, their 20% compliance goal, even though PNM is a much larger utility. There was 1 million or more megawatt hours of the voluntary tariff sales. And so when they deducted that amount, multiplying by 20%, their goal is, their 20% mandated goal is slightly less than SPS's. SPS, I think, had about 5,000 voluntary sales, megawatt hours. Okay, let's see. So PNM had, okay, I already said that. And that really is the conclusion of our report. We appreciate your interest and hope to track these numbers going forward on the website.
Ms. Parks, I guess just a few thoughts. I'm wondering if, the first 3 charts, maybe they would be more clear if we were, using percent on the y-axis as opposed to megawatt hours, and then we wouldn't have the differences in sales. It might be a little clearer presentation. I also, I guess I'm, I think it's valuable to show, the compliance and the excess, because that was actually what was generated by system renewable energy generated by system resources. And I guess I'm a little uncertain around, the customer in this case, because I guess on one hand, it is renewable energy on the grid, on the P&M system. On the other hand, P&M cannot claim those RECs. They cannot claim that in I guess fulfillment of their RPS mandate. So, I guess I wanted to hear what Commissioners O'Connell and Aguilera thought in terms of our website, what is best for us to show.
I think there's too many variables on these graphs. If it's just about where you're at on RPS compliance, it should be what are the sales that are used to calculate your RPS requirement, and then how much renewable energy are you supplying to meet that requirement, plus any excess. And I frankly think this voluntary and customer is double counting. That what it looks to me is that if you subtract customer from voluntary, then you'll get things like Sky Blue. So anyway, I also think, and then I just have a hard time on the table where EPE percent compliance, they're all decimal point zeros. So that just doesn't pass my sniff test. Maybe it's a coincidence, but I don't think the numbers, it doesn't make sense that if they're below 20%, that this would all be whole numbers. So anyway, I'm still struggling with, before we put any of this on the webpage, it needs to be scrubbed again.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I think compliance is a bit misleading. And especially like in El Paso Electric's chart, it makes it seem like they're compliant with the mandate. So I think we need to show maybe what we're a better way to refer to this blue area is RECs, or somehow clearly identify what the target is, the mandated target. Your idea of using a percent on the y-axis would help illustrate that. I think you could also maybe just put a line above each one of these bars to say what they should be meeting. So I would also be in favor of clarifying what we mean by each of these colors, and taking another look.
And I guess just to add to that, I guess one of the difficulties when you look at these numbers is the REC accounting that, the utilities will say, oh, we need, 20%, we have a 20% mandate this year. We're going to use, sort of retire RECs that, give us the 20%. But if we actually generated, say, 22% renewable, then we're going to bank the RECs for those 2%, and then we're going to have them available for compliance purposes in the future. My view is that most people, looking at our website would be more interested in, how much renewable generation that the utility can claim for a given year. And so you would just look at the number of RECs that were generated in that year, and you'd sort of dispense with this complexity of how many are being retired. And because it's for our website, it's for informational purposes, it's not for compliance purposes. And we would still have to discuss whether the voluntary and the customer on the P&M should even be there. So maybe we should do another round of a internal memo or something to take this feedback into account, so that we can feel like it's where we want it to be before it goes up on the website.
Yeah, in that spirit, frankly, I think just throw out there for RPS compliance, it's a 20%. Are you passing yes or no? And then the other one that I think is also in the law, in the renewable portfolio standard, is reasonable and consistent progress to carbon reduction. So renewable energy is a piece of that. So I think it'd be interesting to have a, say, tons of CO2 per megawatt hour measure on there, just to show how are these folks getting towards that other element, because it's really a units thing, right? Because the RPS, it's just percent of sales with some wonkiness around how you count sales. So are you complying with that percent of sales, yes or no? And then are you actually making reasonable and consistent progress to the other standard? That's more of a numeric, and it's not total renewable energy. It's a measure of carbon emissions. So I propose something like tons per megawatt hour.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And maybe another way to show that as well is to put like a slightly shaded bar about like what the utilities anticipate to have in 2024, 2025. I don't know, just another idea to consider, but to sort of show the progress, because that is a hard one to illustrate.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, those numbers would be in their renewable energy plan.
Mhm.
And this data is from the RPS compliance reports.
Mhm.
So what they've done in the past.
Yeah.
And just so we're clear that the 20%, like in the tables, that is a straight number.
Mhm.
And they're either going to meet that or exceed it. And that's why it is 20.0, because that's a calculated number. And so like the tables show how many megawatts that is, and then if they have excess or not. Some years they had deficits. But these years, except for EPE, there was compliance.
Yeah, and I guess if I just wanted to summarize the answer to your question, building on what you're saying now, Ms. Parks, is that from a regulator point of view, our question is, are they meeting the law or not? The utilities aren't going to be shy, and certainly haven't been shy about touting progress of building renewable energy. You let them do that. Are they actually complying with the law or not is our question. And so are you complying with RPS? Yes or no? Are you making reasonable, consistent progress towards zero carbon? Yes. Let's see what that looks like. That's really where I'm at on
Yes.
this.
And I think that last table shows the compliance or not most clearly. The RPS compliance for 2022.
And so
Orange.
if it's acceptable, I can discuss with Ms. Parks offline, and then we can have another iteration come out in a memo and see if that is a little closer to what we'd like to post on the website.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to us. Clearly sparked some good discussion.
Thank you. Appreciate your work on this.
Okay, where are we at? Communications with Chief of Staff. Ms. Corey.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I will try to keep this brief as indicated on the agenda. We're here to talk about performance measures for FY 25. As we discussed at a previous meeting, FY 24 performance measures in the bag already tracking those. We'll be reporting on those this time next year. So what I wanted to present today were the new measures that we will be proposing for FY 25. So a couple of things before I share my screen and we go over the ones that were selected. We've removed 4 measures that we will be tracking in 2024 and requesting that we no longer have to track them in 2025. Those include 2 measures that relate to our transportation division, which will be moving over to DOT. So that'll be their measures to track, hopefully. And then we've removed one regarding, or we've asked to remove one regarding the appeals, because there was a straight, did we win or lose the appeal without any kind of qualifier in there. So we will be requesting to remove that. And we will be requesting to remove the measure that tracks the number of new registrations on our e-docket. And instead, we will be asking to replace those with 6 new measures. When we were crafting these new measures, we were looking at both topics that were specifically of interest provided to us by observers, legislatures, and also the new-ish changes in statute that might be of interest to us and to the legislature to track. And then the last thing that we were trying to do with crafting these measures is provide us and you the information that we need to see how we're doing with our goals going forward. So with that, let me share my screen. All right. We start at the top because the beginning is always a good place to start. So the first one is we're going to be requesting that instead of an up or down, did we win or lose an appeal? Did we win or lose it on procedural grounds? As you may have heard me say in the past, procedural rules, procedural grounds are really the part that we can hopefully follow. And so therefore it's a little bit more in our control than maybe some of the other grounds for reversal on appeal. And so this is going to be our request to replace that measure. Then, as you are aware, there's immense interest in our community solar program. And so we're going to be proposing 2 measures for this one. First is the energy of consumer or community solar projects attributed to low income consumers. That is a statutory one. That's an outcome-based one with a target of 30%. The other one that we will be tracking, which won't be outcome-based, will be explanatory, i.e. we just want to see what the numbers say, is the percent of overall capacity subscribed for the projects. We're also going to be requesting a measure on broadband, and this one too will be explanatory, hopefully, and that is the total number of unserved customers provided new service in the award year. So we want to see how many new customers we can hook up, provide broadband service to, and expand that ability in New Mexico to access broadband. So those are the proposed measures for the program code P611. We also will be requesting 2 new measures in P613, which as a reminder is the Chief of Staff's office, ASD, and legal. Those measures will be the percent of vacancies filled within 12 weeks of posting. We're going to be targeting 75% for that. That should give us information on how well we're competing, not just with other state entities, not just with the utilities for the same resource pool, but also, as you know, we're competing with the labs. And so we want to see how we're doing with that. And then lastly, to replace what we think was the purpose behind measuring the number of e-docket accounts, we want to replace that with a transparency measure to see how well we're doing being transparent to New Mexico. So this is an outcome measure. We're aiming to have 5 public meetings, town halls, public comments outside of the Santa Fe area. And the genesis of this is, as you all are very aware, there used to be 5 districts represented on the PRC. Each of those districts was taken from a geographic location in New Mexico. And so hopefully we can get out there and communicate, talk with, be present in those 5 districts. I mean, honestly, hopefully more than 5 times in FY25, but that is going to be our requested measure to make sure that we're out and about and not closeted here in Santa Fe. So then let me just explain the next steps and then I can stand for questions if that works. So the next steps is our budget team uploads this into the database that I always use the wrong letters for. So I'm not even going to bother to try, but they'll upload it into some database. LFC DFA will take a look at it. They will either approve, deny, or modify these measures. And we should know that about mid-August prior to our FY25 budget submission being due. So with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. And then just these are performance measures that go into our budgeting process at the legislature, right? So we could have more in addition for the agency use.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Yes, that's exactly right. This is just for our reporting and tracking purposes for the legislature, for our budget, to make sure that our budget is performance-based as is required by statute. This does not replace the expectations that we set internally for our staff, for ourselves, for our programs here. But these are the budget related ones.
Thank you. I'm not going to propose that the chair follows an agenda in the order it was presented.
Percentage of time.
Percent of time.
We could make it explanatory instead of out.
Consequences are what I'm afraid of. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so last item, communications with commissioners. I frankly stole my own thunder. Just heads up, I'm going to 2 conferences next week. Next week is NARUC Summer in Austin, Texas, and there will be a meeting of the subgroup of Western commissioners. That's a business meeting. There will be a virtual link if you should want to attend that. And then the following week is SPP's Regional State Committee, and there are a few items on there, whether we get to vote on them or not. I haven't seen the final agenda, but I'll definitely update you in our meeting on July 27th as to what happened at that meeting. So that's my report. Do you have any items?
The only thing I wanted to mention is that for the next meeting, I will be remote. That's all I have.
Physically or mentally?
Physically and mentally remote.
I just had a couple items. One is that I think we probably all received an email about the this WEC member advisory committee. So the issue is that they have an open slot and that there's an election mid-November, and what this membership advisory committee does is they advise the board of WEC on some matters, including budget, reliability, risk priorities, and some transmission planning. So I understand that that currently Cynthia Hall remains a member. It's not, linked to your organization. It's voting for the individual. But, there is this opportunity for, one of us to apply. We'd have to apply. It is an election, so it's not a given. So I guess I just wanted to bring up if what your thoughts might be on that, if who would be best suited to give that a try if we wanted to have representation on that committee.
Yeah, I did get the email. I haven't dug into it yet. When I saw the email, thought it sparked in my head was, we should participate in WEC somehow. The other was, when I go through the list of things I know we're working on, I worry that maybe we haven't plugged into the resource adequacy conversation well enough yet, and this WEC, I think, is a piece of that. So that just confirmed, not just should we be paying attention with what's going on at WEC, we should maybe participate in that one, but I hadn't gone any further than that. And could you remind us, Mr. Rilkoff, we had gone through that big spreadsheet months ago, and there was a WEC assignment, I thought, on there. Do you?
That it was number one in the list.
Oh.
I think, you were the one that was penciled in on that. Well,
Okay. So I'm happy to pursue that if that's something you're interested in. I think that also fits within like the COSER idea that I thought you had signed up for. So happy to support you in that if you'd rather do that to me.
Okay, well, I think we've still got some time to discuss because the election is mid September. So I've got a little more information on, how many times they meet and, some of the, I guess, workload that would be accompanying that. I would mention as well, one of the things that I've been looking into is trying to see if we could get a researcher from Sandia Labs to help us, that would be DOE funded. That's the intent anyway. And so I've approached some folks at Sandia to see if they could have some discussions at DOE to try to make that happen. And I think the idea would be for this person to really focus on these regional market issues. I think one reason is that, if the DOE is funding it, they like to see a regional component, some implications beyond our state. And, the other reason is that, I think, we could certainly use somebody to really focus on this issue of, whether the commission, should have a viewpoint as to, these developing markets, whether, one or the other, and what combination, may be better for, may be best for the public interest. And I think we really haven't talked about that, whether, the commission should develop some, thoughts and perhaps have a preference for one market or the other. And I think if, we were to get some assistance, we could advance our thinking on that. And I've also had a discussion or two around the idea of, do we want to have some workshop or otherwise, solicit views from, in this case, it would be PNM and El Paso Electric as to, their thoughts on that matter. Which of the markets would be best in the public interest. So I just wanted to, I'm not asking for any sort of decision or action. I just wanted to bring that up for discussion.
No, it's timely that you brought that up, because frankly, I'd forgotten to highlight something. I think it's July 25th. The CREPC group is having a virtual meeting, and I can't attend because I'll be with SPP, but MacLeave has signed up from my office. So that, I think what you're talking about I'm expecting there should be some conversations along those lines at that. So what I filtered through my head just listening to you is that's worthy of a agenda item for the meeting on the 27th. Just high level, what I'm seeing is there's a lot of interests out there competing for that space. And the risk is the public interest is going to get left behind. So just because some party got what they wanted doesn't mean New Mexico got the best. And then I think what we should talk about in a couple of weeks is, as a commission, where's our role in that? Because I came to this job with a firm view of the Pottery Barn rule is important, which if I am making decisions that if I'm making choices for the utilities, then I have a hard time holding them accountable because I made that choice. So I think we do have a role, I think, in highlighting what we think the public interest looks like. So anyway, let's have a better discussion on that and what tools are available to us and what we should do. Because I've had that same thought. Should we ask PNM and EPE to come in and explain to us what they're seeing is going on out there and how they're evaluating those things? Did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Yes, for the researcher to look at regional markets, can we have them start yesterday?
I've been trying.
But I do agree, and at a previous meeting, I had mentioned that we should have a workshop and that I would get that started. I can commit to maybe helping that come to fruition. Actually, I do think it would be helpful. I think we definitely have a role. This is going to affect ratepayers, I think, for the better, but we need to know what the expectations are, what regulators expect, what stakeholders expect, what the utilities expect. And I think that conversation is critical to have. And so that being said, I also considered whether to invite SPS, right? They're in a full RTO and they have lessons learned and they have to, submit reports to us. And so I think it would also be beneficial to hear from them potentially. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. You know, I'm happy if this is okay with you, I'm happy to start maybe working on some questions that could be asked at a workshop, or, you know, something to get the conversation started.
I think that would be a great way to frame up a discussion at the meeting in 2 weeks. Also, there are folks that are out there working, like Commissioner Aguilera and I call into that, they call it the MOU group call. And so RAP is under contract to provide services for that committee of regulators. It could be they have something that could help us with just landscape assessment or something like that. So I think we do have maybe not the researcher available, but we do have, there's a body of folks out there who've been thinking about this and might be able to give us a hopefully independent point of view.
One other thing to mention along these lines that I forgot is that I will be going to a training together with Cynthia, and Ed Rilkoff will be there as well on RTOs. This is something put on by the Bosser. So they'll reimburse for 2 staff to go and take the training, and so we reached out to the utility division because thought it would be beneficial for them to be there as well. So this is in August. I think it's the 17th and 18th, which is Thursday and Friday, and it's the off week where we don't have a commission meeting.
Okay, so that was robust. Any other? No? All right, I appreciate that. And was going through some of my dad's old stuff and found a 1954 calculator for Robert's rules, and apparently motion to adjourn requires a second, requires immediate decision, and is not debatable. So do we have I move that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Aguilera,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellison.
Nay.
Too bad, we're adjourned.
Motion passes 2-1.